Let me make sure this works here. So. Do you see it?
Yes, sir.
All right, good. I know the last presentation just ended, so we'll give it a couple of minutes here and then we'll get started. All right, I'm gonna share my screen. Let me know if you all don't see the slideshow, but we'll get started here. Look good? Okay, good. Well, the case had been going on for many years at this point. The complaint that was filed over 2 years prior described a situation where a middle-aged lady, a mother, a wife, her teenage son, her teenage daughter were all killed in a car accident. And for the last 2 years, there were 2 attorneys very good at their jobs, both engaged in the case, trying to work the case through the court system. Some of that is getting discovery, some of that is interviewing witnesses, some of that is just appearing for court dates to alert the court of what's going on in the case. As trial got nearer and nearer, though, the defense started to approach the plaintiff's law firm with an offer to settle the case. And as the first offer came in, $1 million. $1 million. We will give you $1 million to settle the case. The defense firm just got a response back. No. So unlike normal cases where someone will not bid against themselves. The defense firm comes back and says $1.5 million. Settle the case before trial. Response, no. Completely out of the ordinary. Defense firm comes back again. $2 million. Here's $2 million. Resolve the case. No. At which point the firm comes to court with the plaintiff's attorneys and says, Judge, we're making these offers. We're getting no responses back besides no. We're trying in good faith to resolve this case. Please, order us to go to mediation. At least then we could get into the same room and we can talk it out with a mediator there and we could potentially get this case resolved. We want to try our best to resolve this short of a trial. So the court orders the parties to go to mediation. And as the parties go to mediation, what happens on a day of mediation is you have the plaintiff's attorneys, you got the defense attorneys, and you've got the plaintiff in the room. And you have a mediator who is the neutral, who's trying to resolve this legal case and trying to figure out what's been going on for the last 2 years. What happened to get us to this point? And is there any way forward that you all can agree on a resolution? Well, as the plaintiff walks into the room, he walks into the room with his briefcase. And he's clutching this briefcase. And throughout the day now, the mediator is talking to the plaintiff's attorney. He's talking to the defense attorneys. And they're going back and forth, debating the legal issues. They're going back and forth, arguing about money. So the defense firm, all right, $2.5 million. We'll up it to 2.5. No. The man clutching his briefcase just shakes his head. No. $3 million. It's getting late in the day. $3 million. No. At the 11th hour, the defense firm says, all right, you got us. You got us $5 million. $5 million. No. And finally, one of the attorneys on the defense side looks over to the man and says, yeah, all we keep hearing from you is no. But what I've noticed throughout the day is you've been clutching this briefcase the whole day. You've had it in your lap and you've had it in your arms. And I'm wondering, what's in the briefcase? And the man says, nothing. He just looks at the other attorney, puts the briefcase on the table, opens it up, and there's a binder. And he pulls out this binder, and he opens it. And he goes to the first page in the binder, and there's a picture. And he looks at the picture, and he says, this one's from our wedding day. I could still remember that smile on her face as the photographer just caught this picture at just the moment when she had just whispered in my ear. We had just cut the cake, put the cake in each other's mouths, and she whispered in my ear and she said, boy, I snore really loud. Are you sure you don't want a divorce? And we both just giggled to each other. And of course, I didn't want a divorce because she was the love of my life. And this was the best day of my life. And I look at this picture and I remember the dreams we would have together, how we wanted to grow old together. I remember us talking about our kids. And I remember now how difficult it is for me to sleep without her noise in the room each night. Man picked up the binder again, turned the page. This is my boy. This is a picture of him pitching. Did you know we started throwing the ball back and forth as soon as he could walk? Out in the yard, I thought I was tireless, but he wore me out. I mean, we would spend hours out in the yard just tossing the ball back and forth. This picture's from a newspaper clipping from his last game that I saw him play. There were 5 scouts there that day getting ready to recruit him to some of the best colleges and even a pro team. I remember sitting out in the yard with him at night and we'd look up at the stars. And when we looked up at the stars, I would just listen to him dream about the what ifs. What if this? What if that, Dad? What if this? And I would look at that and I would just live part of my life through his eyes. I can't look at the stars anymore. They just don't seem as bright. Picked up the binder again, turned the page. This is my baby girl. I remember the day she was born, how she just fit into my hands. I remember thinking, now my life is complete. I remember holding her in my hands and just praying to God that he would give me the power to protect her. This picture is from our daddy-daughter dance in junior high. And I remember that night where I would just hold her, and I was thinking in my mind how someday I'd be dancing with her at her wedding, and how that time would just come too quickly. And now I know that I failed her because I wasn't able to protect her. Do you understand now? And with that, he walked out of the room. He walked out of the room. And what we see is, in that situation, it wasn't that the attorneys weren't engaged in his case. It wasn't that his attorneys weren't good attorneys or the defense weren't good attorneys. It wasn't that they didn't know how to push the case through the court system. It wasn't that their offers were out of range of what an offer would be in this sort of case. It wasn't that they didn't know the law or the legal issues or were experts in it. What we see is that they didn't have empathy. And when we think about empathy, empathy is something that is different than engagement. Empathy is a situation where we could entertain, we could be present in the room and have our own selves in someone else's shoes. And you look at this little picture of this little guy here with the big shoes on, and none of us would think that little guy putting his dad's shoes on, suddenly the little guy has all the experience of his dad just by putting his dad's shoes on. Suddenly the little guy understands that dad's boss is yelling at him every day, or that he's late for work, or that he has to pay these bills, or he's past due on the mortgage. The little guy never knows any of that because empathy requires us not just to stand in someone's shoes, it requires us to walk a mile, to walk in someone's shoes, to remove ourselves and our experience and our bias and our notions of what that person's walk should be and actually walk their walk. Some people say you have to infuse yourself in their lives, infuse yourself in their experience. And that infusion is now your way to connect to that person on a different level. It's far different than sympathy. Sympathy is less. It's less. You see empathy and sympathy, they both end in pathos. They both have this component of suffering. But with sympathy, you feel sorry for someone. You are removed from their plight, from their difficulty. With empathy, E-M, it means to be within their suffering, not apart from, but within. And what you see with empathy is when we demonstrate empathy, when we have empathic relationships, connection increases, closeness increases. When closeness and connection increase, trust increases. You build a rapport with someone that isn't normally there. When conflict arises and you have that close relationship with someone, it's far easier to resolve the conflict because they know that you will not only just step into their shoes or feel sorry for them, but you will also walk in their shoes and understand what they're feeling. It's like this quote here: empathy is seeing with the eyes of another, listening with the ears of another, and feeling with the heart of another. There's no you in that. So I want to give you a different scenario. And this is a scenario that happened to me not too long ago. I'm in my office. It's towards the end of the semester. I have a knock on the door. And the knock is a student of mine in an online class, purely asynchronous online class. I've never actually met this student in person, in physical person. The knock on the door is, "Sir, can I talk to you for a minute?" "Sure, come on in." And as I kind of walk up to the door, and I make eye contact with this student. And as I make eye contact with this student, I see in this student's eyes pain, despair, emptiness, sorrow, dread. I'm sure you've all had that situation before. You walk up to someone and you see that in their eyes. And I thought to myself, boy, someone must have passed away in their family. Maybe she's concerned about the final exam. Maybe she needs an extension. I'm not sure. But sure, come on in. Let's talk. We sit down and she says to me, "I just needed to talk to someone. A couple years ago, I was raped. And last week, I tried to kill myself." And as I am kind of pulling this revelation into me, I am looking at this student and I'm seeing a high-collared shirt that's trying to hide ligature marks on her neck. I see her tension in her hands as her hands just won't stop shaking. No matter how hard she squeezes them, they just won't stop shaking. And as my eyes kind of come back up to her eyes, now after this revelation, I see in her eyes embarrassment, disappointment, unworthiness, failure, and even just a little bit of relief because now she's told somebody. She's told me. I want to stop for a minute at that point in the story, and I want to ask you, in your online classes, in your asynchronous, purely asynchronous, not hybrid classes, not remote, not partially online, in your purely asynchronous classes, I want you to kind of, I'm not going to ask you to respond here, but I want you to take these 3 questions in and ask yourself, how often do you see your students' eyes in your online class? Purely asynchronous, how often do you see your students' eyes? How often do your students see your current eyes? And I put current eyes there for a reason. How often do they see your current eyes? Not eyes from a lecture video that we've recorded 3 years ago. Not prior lecture videos, but your current eyes. A sample of currently you. How often do they see your current eyes? How often do students see each other's eyes in your online class? And I want these 3 questions to kind of be in your mind as we discuss now the second part of this presentation. How often do your students see your current eyes? How often do you see their eyes? And how often do students see each other's eyes? Because what I'll tell you is, leading up to that day with this student who knocked on my door, I mentioned before, purely asynchronous class, never met this student in person, but when she knocked on my door, I knew exactly who she was. I knew her name, I knew about her, I knew how she was doing in the class, I knew about her parts about her family, I knew parts about her life, not these parts, but I knew what was going on in her life besides class. And the way I went about this is I rarely, if ever, reuse lecture videos. She gets to see me currently. I give feedback in lecture videos, current feedback. My lecture videos refer to students in the class. And that is kind of a double check on me at times, because sure, it's easy. If I do an awesome lecture video, it would be easy to use that lecture video for the next 5 years. Not sure I could do it any better the next time. But by referring to students in class or bringing up current events, I am telling them that my time for this class is important to me. I am making a connection with students. Right now, I am preaching here to an empty room. I can't even see any of you as I'm giving this presentation. But in my mind, in this empty room, I am seeing students in my class. And I could see in this online presentation, I could see each of you in this room that I'm presenting to. It's far different than, it doesn't matter who's in this room. It doesn't matter who's in this room. Discussion boards. With discussion boards, you could have discussion boards that just have students post words. I have students post videos. And some students say, oh, I hate to post videos. And I say, well, it's important. It's important because I get to see you. students get to see you. In fact, I have students in discussion boards when they're posting videos. I will have them either reply to the lecture video that I gave, and I'll ask them, what did you like about the lecture video? What were you confused about? And then that will give me a chance to have a conversation with them, even in an asynchronous class. And I'm comfortable enough to have a student say, oh, I was confused about that on the lecture video. Great. Next time I do that lecture video next semester, I'll do it better. Or here's the answer to your question. Or maybe I shouldn't test on that because maybe I wasn't as clear as I thought I would be. But the students get to see me, the current me, in the lecture video, responding to them. They respond to me in their discussion board posts, and even on assignments that I give, I am asking them, all right, tell me something about this assignment. In Blackboard, there's the commentary section besides where they enter assignments. Tell me what you thought about this assignment. Now this one, I encourage you all to do it. I know it's a lot of work, but with online classes, I have one-on-one team meetings with every student in an online class, either once or twice a semester. And you think, holy cow, it's 20 meetings, 25 meetings. Yeah. And my thought is that in those one-on-one teams meetings that I have, they're seeing me. I am seeing them. I'm hearing about them. I'm hearing about the class. I'm hearing about their dreams and hopes and fears and confusion and where they want to go with their life. What's happening in their life. There is no accident. It was no accident that this student came and knocked on my door. It wasn't that I was some unknown to her and she was just walking down the hall and said, I think I'll knock on this door. Over the semester, we had built a connection that wouldn't have existed if I had just focused on engagement. If I had just focused on engagement, I would have been those attorneys passing numbers back and forth. As a teacher, can you pass the test? Can you get an A in my class? Can you do this assignment well? Can I give you another movie clip that's going to entertain you? Or can I spend my time connecting to you? And one-on-one Teams meetings, sure, it takes a lot of time. But the way I think in my mind is I am just repurposing office hours. I could sit in my office and never have a student come to my office. Or I could repurpose that and I could say, throughout this semester, we're going to meet. And I'm going to use that time to meet with you and to learn about you and to understand you and to have you know some stuff about me. That I have a 60-pound boxer, Chloe, who's my daughter. In detailed feedback that I give on assignments, I'll end that feedback with something like, I believe in you. I have faith in you. I see greatness in you. And I will tell you that for this student who knocked on my door, she said to me, you are the only person that's ever said, I believe in you. It may seem like a small thing. It may seem like something that isn't going to make a difference in anyone's life. But you might be the only person who has ever said something like that to a student. And for this student, it made all the difference. Not just some difference, it made all the difference. It's what brought her to my door that day. Now, why do I keep focusing on eyes and seeing your students, or your students seeing the current you, or your students seeing each other in an online class? Well, I can't get into all of the science behind microfacial expressions and mirroring, but there is tons of information out there. And I want to share a little bit about this with you. And what this science is that through these microfacial, just our body language and particularly our face and our eyes, we give away so much communication and connection to someone that it surpasses any words we could ever use. You can see in this little picture, she doesn't have to say any words. You could just read her face and know what she's thinking. And at times, when we connect microfacial expressions to empathy, what we have is microfacial expressions build empathy in interpersonal communication. So what happens is, if I make a certain pained look on my face, or with this student, when I saw fear and I saw disappointment and embarrassment, my eyes are mirroring the expression in her eyes in that split second. And what happens is, by mirroring, by my eyes replicating what her eyes are doing, my brain understands what she's feeling in a deeper way, because my brain knows if my eyes make this certain movement, my brain knows, man, Murray's in pain. Murray's disappointed. Murray's feeling fear. And it gives me that way to step out of my current state and infuse myself in hers. So microfacial expressions is a way where, if we don't have them, if they're missing, if we just have online classes without lecture videos, if we have online classes without students posting videos, if we have online classes without students seeing other students, they are never able to have this mirroring that builds empathy. Sure, we may have engagement, but we have engagement where the plaintiff in the room is still holding on to the briefcase because they have nobody to give it to. There's a study that was done where 16 wives were put into a room, and in this room, they consented to this, but they were given certain uncomfortable shocks on their fingertips. And as they got these uncomfortable shocks, they were also attached to a scan that was going on in their brain at the same time. So as they got these shocks on their fingertips, the brain scan was mapping where these ladies were feeling pain, and their brain was firing in certain areas. So they were mapping their brains in order to see, okay, where is the pain going to? And what they did is, after this experiment was over with the zaps on their fingers, they still kept the ladies attached to the machine. And they said to the ladies, all right, your husbands are in the next room. They're going to get the zaps on their fingers now. And what the brain scan showed was that the ladies still had pain show up in their brains because they were feeling what they had previously felt in their fingers, knowing that their husbands were about to go through the same thing. Even though they weren't getting zapped anymore, they had empathy for what was going on in the other room. It's a way for us to connect to other people when we actually infuse ourselves in their lives. There's another study that deals with Botox. And with Botox, what we have is, when people get Botox injections around their eyes, oftentimes studies have shown where those people now have a more difficult time having empathic relationships because their eyes can no longer, it mutes, it dulls the muscles around their eyes, and they can no longer mirror other people's emotions with their own eyes. Similarly, people have trouble being in giving empathy to people with Botox injections because the people with their eyes, they don't move the same way. This is drawn out, if you want to look into it. Certain movie directors will not hire actresses that have significant Botox injections around their eyes because audiences can't relate to those actresses anymore because their eyes don't give off the same emotion that they previously did before the injections. So you can't connect to the actress the same way. All of those non-verbal body language, microfacial expressions that we pick up on, they're dulled. They become expressionless. That is what we have in an online class when we are masking eyes. Now, the reason why I say current eyes, how often do students see our current eyes, is because if you think about it, if I have a lecture video from 5 years ago that I'm posting in each class from then on, I am giving off my microfacial expression, my eyes from 5 years ago. Now, maybe 5 years ago, I was going through a difficult time. Maybe I was sad. Maybe I was angry that day. Maybe I was scared about something. And now 5 years later, I'm in an entirely different mindset. Well, a student is going to pick up. You don't think this is going to happen, but the studies show the students are going to pick up your microfacial expressions from 5 years ago and think that that's you today. And it's not. You're not actually building empathy for you today. You're not building that closeness and that connection with how you are today. You're building that closeness and connection with you of 5 years ago. There's another study that's been done where just the use of emojis, this is fascinating, just the use of emojis in text messages and in written communication, that can help build intimacy and a connection between the sender and the receiver. Because what happens is our brains are still searching for a connection. They don't get that connection from the words alone. It's just not as strong. Instead, our brains, our minds are trying to get that connection to mirror facial expressions. So if we see an emoji and we're able to even mirror the expression on the emoji, we have a stronger connection to the sender because of it. Fascinating. But if we take out the emojis, or if we take out the eyes, we take out the videos, we take out the interaction in online classes, we are never able to do this. Mirroring and mimicry are very similar. You'll often see, I challenge you to go out today. I did it in class the other night. I broke my students into different two-person groups, and I had them negotiating a different aspect of a case. And what happens is people mimic other people's movements. It's a way that we do, it's what we do when we are in adverse situations or we're trying to build rapport with someone. You'll regularly see all of a sudden the people have the same, body language. Here we have the man, two guys with their hands behind their head. You probably have been in a situation where one person yawns and another person yawns. It builds rapport. Oh, you're tired, I'm tired now, even though I didn't feel tired before. You have people that lean in. By leaning in, it's I am encouraging you to speak to me. And if you lean in, then I lean in, and we mimic each other. We mirror each other. You could see this with handshakes. Probably one of these gentlemen don't normally handshake with both hands, but when one person does it, the other person does it too. I was watching a cooking show the other night, and one of the contestants got a compliment. And for the compliment, the contestant went like this. And then what did the judge do back to the contestant? The judge went like this. I doubt that judge, with every compliment they give contestants, goes like this to each contestant. They don't. But we have a habit when we are in interpersonal relationships to mimic each other. And with that mimicry, we build empathy, we build trust, we build rapport that wouldn't otherwise exist. I'm sure you could look at these situations here and see a difference than this last one here, where these two are on completely different ends of the spectrum. It is this sort of thing that we are missing if our main focus is just engagement without empathy. So what I call engagement without empathy is empty engagement. And I call it empty engagement not to be derogatory, but because there is no pathway. We talk about pathways all the time. There is no pathway for empathy to take hold in a situation where you never have eye-to-eye, face-to-face contact, even in an online class. Students never get to see your eyes. You never get to see students' eyes. Students never get to see each other's eyes, even if they don't, on the spot in real time interact. If a student is responding to another student's post, they are seeing each other's eyes and learning from each other, even in an online class. When we don't have this, there's studies that have been done. One study, a student said, I went to my online class, sure they had lecture videos, but I felt like I was paying tuition to watch a YouTube video. There was no closeness. There was no rapport. There was no trust that was built. There was no connection. A lot of times these days what we hear is that students are not fulfilled with certain online classes. They mirror this student. They feel like they're watching YouTube videos. But on the other side of that, we hear of teachers who are not fulfilled and walk away from the profession because they say, what do they say about online classes? I didn't have the same connection with my students. I wasn't as fulfilled teaching online classes. I didn't have the same closeness. I didn't have the same feeling I got from an in-person class where I got to see my students. And what I would say to you is, for those teachers, they were just putting engagement over empathy. If we think that online classes are just meant to be entertainment, we are no different than putting this child in front of the TV screen while we go about and do our chores in the background. That parent has no connection, no closeness in that moment with the child. The child, sure. Is the child learning? Sure. Barney teaches well. Is the child, is their time taken up? Sure. Are they entertained? Sure. But what relationship has been built between the parent and the child in that moment? None. There's no fulfillment. There's no trust. There's no closeness. What I submit to you is that in these moments, when we have no eye-to-eye, face-to-face connection in online classes, this is our brain. Our brain is just buffering. Our brain is buffering, waiting for something that they could draw to in order to say, now I know this person. Now I feel connected. Now I feel them walking in my shoes a little bit. Now I I could feel like I'm not alone, that I'm not just in my room watching a video. Instead, this is somebody that I could go knock on a door and talk to. This is almost, some of the course evaluations that I love the most is when I get a student who says, for an online class, this was as close to a face-to-face class as I could have gotten. Maya Angelou gives a great quote. She says, I've learned that people will forget what you said. People will forget what you did, but people will never forget how you made them feel. And I think that that's so true. Except sometimes I think as educators, we put at the top that we want people to remember what we said or how we did the lecture. We put those first things at the top and we say, boy, if only you could spit back to me what I said, you're going to be okay in this class. But instead, we can't lose the how did we make them feel? The last presentation was eye-opening. It was shocking about technology. And some of the comments in the chat was, oh, maybe we could get the computer to grade our papers. Maybe we could get the computer to give our lectures. And I'm just looking at this and I'm thinking, is that what we want? Do we want to lose the human connection? Do we want machines to be able to teach our classes better than we can? To give a version of the Scarlet Letter and teach it better than we can after having read it? Or do we want to give the students our heart and say, you're never going to get this from a video. You're never going to get this from a machine. If the machine tells you that the machine believes in you, what does that mean? But if I tell you I believe in you, if I tell you I have faith in you, that you can be great, what does that mean? How can I make you feel? It's not about remembering what I said. You're going to forget that. The other day I was at a conference and the speaker gave a great story, and I'll close with this story. I want to share it with you. Sammy Davis Jr., great entertainer, tap dancer, singer. He had a protege, Mr. Hines there. And as Sammy Davis Jr. was nearing the end of his life, he was at an award show, and Gregory Hines came on the stage to honor Sammy Davis. Sammy Davis Jr. was near the end stages of cancer. He was dying, and Gregory Hines came on the stage, and he tap danced his heart out as well as he could on the stage. And after this great production, he collapses in front of Sammy Davis, and he gave his heart to this presentation. And Sammy Davis in his seat, some tears falling down, leans over to Gregory Hines and he says, "Get me some shoes." And Gregory Hines brings over some tap dance shoes for Sammy Davis. He puts them on his feet, and Sammy Davis gets up in front of the crowd, and with all his strength and might, he just gives a little shuffle for the audience one last time. Shortly thereafter, at Sammy Davis's eulogy, Gregory Hines is giving his eulogy. And he says, that day, that was emotional on the stage that day, but that was not the last time that Sammy Davis actually performed for the crowd. Well, performed at all. He said, I was there the last days of his life, and I was sitting by his bedside, And as I sat there by his bedside, and I was sitting there for a couple of hours, Sammy's all attached to machines, frail from the cancer. And I got up to leave. And as I was leaving, I wasn't sure if this was going to be the last time that I saw him. So I got up to leave, and I gave a little shuffle for Sammy one last time. And Sammy sat up in bed. And as he sat up in bed, he started to pull the breathing tubes off of his face, and the nurse tried to stop him, and he just shooed the nurse away. And Sammy Davis got up, and he stood up with all his might just off of the bed. And to Gregory Hines, he moved his legs a couple more times, gave him a couple more shuffles, and then he went like this. As if to pass everything that he was, all of his skill and experience and talent, and everything he had left in him, to pass it to his protege, Gregory Hines. And I guess what I do for you all today is it's up to you what you want to make online classes. It's up to you how far you want to take the presentation I gave today. But I could tell you, based on the presentation that we had prior to this one, a different world seems to be coming our way. A world where technology is trying to invade the classroom and make the classroom maybe more efficient, maybe more accurate, maybe better at giving course objectives. But the one thing that we have that a computer will never have is the ability to have empathy and to connect with our students. And if we are not willing to give that to students, if we'd rather have them feel like they're watching YouTube videos, we've missed the point. We've missed the humanity. We're missing the knocks on the door. Thanks. I hope that was helpful. Any questions for me?
Thank you, Dr. Murray. I really enjoyed this, but I wanted to say just a suggestion. I thought this was wonderful, but as you were saying this, I kind of was resonating with it, and not only how the technology and online has invaded our classrooms, but also our work between our colleagues and our administrators here. And I kept thinking about how oftentimes people email me and will ask me to do something. Then they will evaluate what I've done. And these are people that I work for, and they have not seen my eyes.
Yeah.
These are people that oftentimes their office is in the same building. Right. And they don't, we have missed making that connection that I think we need so that we can be empathetic for each other, not just so that they can be empathetic for me, right, but so that I can also be empathetic for them. So I would love to see this again with a focus of that, because I think it is extremely needed. So I just wanted to throw that comment out there, but thank you so much. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah, no, I think that that's a great point, and something I would point you all to is Simon Sinek. He gives a great TEDx talk on why leaders eat last, and one of the things he points out in that talk is that so often we get caught up in responding emails that are efficient. It's a way to transfer information very quickly, but by emailing when someone asks your opinion on something and they're right down the hall, an email response back for an emotional response does nothing for interpersonal relationships. In fact, our body builds up oxytocin when there is interpersonal relationship between people. And the more we build up oxytocin, the more it makes us feel good. It makes the other person feel good that they helped us. It makes a person who sees two people helping each other feel good because now they see two people helping each other. And that just builds people wanting to help each other more. Where an email in an office for 2 seconds doesn't build up any oxytocin or help anybody. So his point one of his points in the TEDx talk is spend the 30 seconds to walk down the hall and say, hey, I got your email. I wanted to give you a response. You'll see people fall off their chairs these days because they're not expecting that, but it will help make the world a little bit better of a place. So yeah, good point, Haley. I appreciate it. Anything else? All right, I got to go get my blood pressure down now.
I'm going to go ahead and
Nice
stop
job,
the
John.
recording.